Hi and welcome once again to Daily Musing. I remain your favorite host, Benjamin-Whyss here. So today is episode 2 on escape from trauma, right? So today we're going to be talking about the burden of transferred trauma. Now, if you've not listened to the previous episode, which is episode 1, we talked about childhood trauma and different forms of traumas and what you should know about them. You can go back and actually start from there, all right? So you can catch up with this episode. So today we're going to be talking about one of the traumas that is usually overlooked. And the reason is because people do not actually realize that they are carrying within themselves a trauma or a pain that they have absorbed from other people, right? Yet it is a very subtle and powerful thing that, carries a lot of implications on our daily lives, in our relationships, in our work, and even our overall well-being, right? So transferred trauma is like a secondary trauma, and it can be very, very vicarious. So basically, what that is it occurs when individuals absorb the trauma experienced by others, right? So this is not even your trauma. It is not like you had a childhood that was traumatic. You were just living your normal life, and for some reason, right, you just absorb an experience from someone. It could even be a show that you watch or an event, a live event you saw on TV. Maybe there was a natural disaster and all of a sudden you just absorbed and you internalized that suffering that you saw people going through, right? So this can happen through close relationships with someone. It can happen through caregiving roles. It can happen through exposure to traumatic stories. And like I said, it can happen by just watching maybe a show or a live event of something happening. So it's a form of emotional contagion where pain and suffering of others become internalized by another person. All right, let me break it down so you can actually understand how this happens. You know what empathy is, right? Why empathy is a very, very beautiful thing and necessary part of human connection. When we empathize deeply with someone, we open ourselves to their emotional state. That is basically what we are doing. So what happens is, if we are not careful, if you don't guard yourself properly, this can lead to the absorption of their trauma, right? So professionals like therapists, first responders, and even family members are often faced with this type of risk because they have to deal with other people's traumatic experiences on a regular basis, right? So a lot of people overlook transferred trauma because they don't see the effect or the result until later. And they don't even know they are opening up themselves to other people's, traumas until when they begin to do some deep searching, or probably when they go for therapy, and eventually they realize that I never used to feel like this. I never used to have this. I think this happened when I saw this event or when I talked to this person, and, I was so gripped by the event or the story of that person that it just stuck with me, and I just couldn't unsee it. I just couldn't undo it, right? So the burden of transferred trauma can significantly affect our daily lives, right? And even our relationship. It's like a ripple effect. It can affect or influence how we interact with other people and perceive the world. For example, in a relationship, transferred trauma can manifest as heightened sensitivity. Probably you're not someone who used to be sensitive at things before, then you now acquired someone else's trauma. You just realize that in your relationship you become very sensitive when someone mentions something or talk about something you had encountered, a trauma you have encountered. You begin to have panic attacks, you begin to have some form of anxiety just because of something you had seen or something you have heard. So then you begin to withdraw. Now, for example, a person who have absorbed trauma from a partner may become very, very careful and cautious, right? So the reason you begin to do that is you become very careful for potential threats or emotional upheavals because you don't want a strain in a relationship. So it now looks like you're walking on eggshells. It now look like you don't want to say anything that is going to hurt the person. You begin to look out for, you just begin to be very careful at what you do around that person. So what you don't realize is that your present situation is that you have taken up someone else's traumatic experience and it's causing a lot of lingering effect in your relationship, right? And you realize that things that you have started doing are things you don't do before. Then it becomes very worrisome for you, right? Even for some people, it shows up at work, right? It becomes a thing where you are so burdened and it begins to lead to burnout. You begin to have compassion fatigue and it decreases your productivity, right? So individuals in caregiving professions, such as healthcare workers or social workers, might find themselves emotionally drained, struggling to maintain their well-being while being constantly exposed to others' trauma. Because people like that, what eventually will happen is their guard are usually up. For example, if you're someone who has spent a lot of your life helping victims of domestic violence, right? Over time, your guard will be up because you will become hypervigilant. So if two people are just having a normal argument, your sensitivity is heightened because you think that a domestic violence is about to happen because of what you have seen. And these two people are probably just having a healthy argument. But in your mind, you're thinking it might lead to domestic violence because you have seen something similar to that before, right? Even for families, traumatic experience, can create a cycle of stress and emotional turbulence. Now, a typical example is we've seen scenarios where someone went to a house that is not hers. She went to visit a friend and she saw a domestic abuse happen, right? And I think she got back home to a relationship and she had an argument with a boyfriend and it was heated and she moved out of things because she said she became scared that she thought an abuse was about to happen. But this was an acquired trauma. This was because she has gone to a place where she witnessed domestic violence firsthand. She acquired that trauma. She has never been in any domestic violence before all her life. She just saw that happen and she just thought that was what was happening in her relationship. And she did not realize it. Another one is we could see this in parents who are very overprotective, parents who are anxious around their children, where they try to keep their children away from certain lifestyle, or they don't want their child to have some form of sense of independence. Why? It is because of something they've actually faced, and we've seen this even within our society, right? So this is very, very important. So transferred trauma is often overlooked, is very, very often overlooked as an aspect of emotional health. So the first thing you need to do is you need to recognize it. So if there's something you realize that has not been happening before and you're beginning to sense it in your relationship or in your own life, your daily life, I think you should look into it, whether you've seen something, whether you've watched something, whether you've gone on to acquire a traumatic experience of someone else, right? So you need to address it. Else, the impact is going to be a lot. So it's essential to be aware of emotional boundaries and practice self-care to prevent you absorbing someone else's trauma. So even if you're listening to someone or you're watching a life experience or a life event of a natural disaster or something, try as much as possible to create an emotional boundary that would see you not acquire the other person's trauma. All right, it's very, very important. So in our next episode, right, we're going to explore the challenges of overcoming severe trauma. Like, why is it so difficult to actually, overcome this trauma? And I'm going to offer insights and strategies for those who feel their trauma is insurmountable, and those who have been struggling with it for a while. I'm going to tell you some of the things you need to do that can actually help you, get through it. All right. Like I always said, don't worry. The healing is going to happen. All right. You just stay patient and hang in there and you will be fine. So thank you for joining us today again on the Musing. Remember, acknowledging the burden is the beginning of finding relief and healing. All right. I remain your favorite host, Benjamin-Whyss. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye.